according to your insurances and things like that, you definitely have to have a birth certificate or you cannot collect your insurance.
Yeah. Today is February 1st, 1983. This is Joe Todd interview with Lola Margaret Isom, I-S-O-M. Mrs. Isom, where were you born?
In Avery, Texas, in Red River County,
And when's your birthday?
May the 10th.
What year, or should I ask?
Oh, well, really, about 1910. No, that's not right. I don't want to tell that.
You don't want to tell that?
I don't want to tell the birthday. My birthday is May the 10th.
May the 10th. Okay, I won't ask what year.
You won't that's what I don't want you to ask.
Okay. How long did you live in Texas?
I think we came to Oklahoma in 1916 from Avery, Texas.
Avery, Texas. Do you have any memories of Avery? Any childhood memories?
Yes.
What was the town like?
What the town like?
Yeah.
It was just a town of 500 people.
What was the main industry?
No, nothing. A few department stores. I don't remember much because I hadn't even started school when I was first living there. I think I was got out of the second or third grade the time I left there. So.
Who was your father?
John Bayless, Bayles, I believe, Grant.
And who was your mother?
My mother was, this is a hard one for me to spell. It's Araminta, 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 and she had another name, but I don't know what. And her maiden name was Aiken, Aiken.
What did your father do? What kind of business?
Well, he was farming first, and then the next thing he did, he went into livery stable work. Did you know what that was?
Yes. That's what, with working with horses and...
Yeah, and there was two trains that met there in the morning and evening.
This is in Avery?
Huh?
This is in Avery?
Yeah, And if somebody would come in and wanted to go out in the country, they'd have no way to go. They'd get off the train. Well, he had a bunch of horses, and he had, some of them were buggies, and some had they'd let when those drummers had come in, they'd let those things drop down, and he'd put his luggage, now, I don't know what they put them in then, I don't even remember what they carried their clothes in to go out to the country stores, and display their merchandise. So he did that. And then Daddy went to work in a store, a general department store, and was assistant buyer there for, I don't remember how long. And then he came to Oklahoma, and was hired by a man of Harris, Bert Harris. And he had a gin, and he wanted my daddy to come over and run that gin during the fall.
What part of Oklahoma?
Well, it was called Pleasant Hill, just 6 miles out of Hayworth.
What year was that? 1916, right?
Yeah.
How'd you come to Oklahoma?
In a covered wagon. Boy, I date way back.
Any memories about the trip, the covered wagon trip?
Yes, no, not then, but when I got here there was. We got there about sundown. It was about 30 miles from Avery over to there. And it was the first day of September, I remember that. And so we came in this covered wagon, and this fellow furnished us a house, and there were 5 children. So Friday afternoon, Mother took us, and school started the day that we moved to Oklahoma. And it was just a 3-teacher country school. And so Mother took us up to school to enroll 3 of us. The other 2 weren't old enough. And the main thing I remember, and what broke my heart, practically all the children in school were part Indians, mostly, almost full of blood. And we had never seen an Indian before. And so my brother and sister, the three of us, started school. Boy, when Mother got us home, we started crying, and Mother started crying. And we said we wasn't going to school. We weren't going to school with those Negroes. And Daddy says, well, and he talked to us, and he said, well, now I've taken this job, and I'll have to, and it's pretty good money. So I don't know what it was then. I have no idea what he made. But anyway, we was living off of it. But that was our first, my first introduction to Oklahoma and my impression of it. And I was afraid of Indians. And Mother was, and my brother and sister were. So we were just unhappy, very unhappy. And so I started to church the next Sunday. Not to church, but to school. And we started in Sunday school and church because my daddy, they were very religious. And we weren't there too long till my daddy was elected superintendent of Sunday school. And he managed to get a minister there. They didn't even have a minister.
What church was it?
Huh?
What church was it?
It was a Methodist, I believe. I'm not sure, but I think it was Methodist. Now I think they've changed to a Baptist. And he got a minister that would just come once a month, I think, and just preach on Sunday morning. And then we'd have Sunday school each Sunday, you know. And heck, I bet there weren't 20 people there. So.
How big was Pleasant Hill?
Well, they had, I don't know, but they had, I just have no idea, but I know how a lot less than 100 people. If they had 50, they was lucky.
Yeah. How big is Hayworth?
Hayworth was about, we stayed down at Pleasant Hill 2 years, and then we moved to Hayworth. And Daddy went to work for a company out of Ashdown, running a gin in the fall.
Cotton gin?
Cotton gin, And he had, and then you asked me another question I was supposed to answer for that. What was it?
How big was Hayworth?
Oh, how big? They had 2 banks, they had 2 drugstores, and they had a newspaper, a weekly newspaper. And I don't know how many then, but when we stayed there for about 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to Idabel. Well, Hayworth only had 500 when we left there. And both banks had gone broke, both drugstores had gone broke, the newspaper had gone broke, and there just wasn't anything left. And I probably didn't have 500. Like I said, I was pretty young then and just down in a grade class. So
remember the name of the school you went to at Pleasant Hill?
Just called Pleasant Hill School.
Pleasant Hill School. Who was the teacher?
His name was F.S. Phelps. F.S. P-H-E-L-P-S Phelps. And his wife were the 2 teachers. And her name was Florence. So he had half the grades, she had half. Mm-hmm. And they were from Paducah, Kentucky.
Paducah.
And how they happened to come, he had been someplace, I think, looking for a school up around New Red. I think I'm right on, but I'm not sure. So I wouldn't take out none of these on the note. And he didn't get to school there, and he heard about this one at Pleasant Hill. So they came down there, and he and his wife went to work. And then they had a little girl while they was there. And I'm trying to think. And he had, through the 8th grade, and his wife, I don't know how high her grades were. She had the beginners and then lower than that. So I'd say they probably didn't have over 50 people in the whole school. maybe not that many.
How many years did you go to school there?
2 years.
2 years. What was your favorite subject?
Well, I was always pretty good in math, and I was good in history and geography. In fact, I just loved school, and I did make good grades.
What's your best memory about school? Your favorite memory?
Well, it wouldn't be in Hayworth, and it wouldn't be in Idabel, and it wouldn't be in Avery, Texas. Then we moved to Idabel, and that's where I graduated high school.
How big is Idabelle when you moved there?
Uh,
What was your first impression of it?
oh, I thought it was a city then, compared with Idabel with Hayworth with 500. It seemed like a city to me, but I don't know what it is. But Idabel, we moved back down there in '72, and they have about 8,000 people there now. But it was little then, because we only had one school building there, for high school, grade school, and everything.
What year did you graduate?
Let me see if I remember. 19 and I don't know whether it's 27 or 28. I don't know how old I'd be, would I? You're supposed to be 12 years old. You're supposed to have 12 grades.
Yeah.
So,
That's about right.
and then when I left there, then I started going to school in in Durant, at Southeastern. Did that for 2 summers. There's a group of the students there in school in Idabel, and one of the mothers went with us, and we rented a house, and we all started going to school. But we was taking high school courses in the college there at Southeastern then, called Southeastern something. Now it's called Southeastern Institute, I think, or Southeastern University or something like that. And so we did that 2 summers, and I took high school work. And along with, I hadn't graduated high school, but I added some other same subjects in. Then when I went back that fall, and I added on to it, and I graduated high school in 3 years, with 93% average.
From high school or college?
High school.
High school?
High school. And I was third one in the class.
Yeah. Who were some of the prominent people in Idabel that you remember at that time?
I think they're most dead. Most of them are dead. I think most of them. When I graduated from high school, there were 22 people in that high school class, and that's the largest one they'd ever had.
Mm-hmm.
But when we moved back down there in '72, there were 3 people that was in my class that were living in Idabel. And one of them has died since then. One of them was a sister and a brother, and the other one was she started out being a school teacher, and she was living down there. So there were only 3 people there that was in the graduation class that I graduated in 1922.
But when you graduated from high school in...
Excuse me, I need to get my boots.
in high school, who were some of the prominent people in Idabel when you were in high school? Like who were the bankers and the lawyers in town?
I can't even think of a lawyer. And the bankers too, and I didn't know.
Did you know any of the Choctaws in that area, the Indians?
Not one of them. There were Indians that went to school too, but I never did know them. And they were in some of my classes, but I never did mix with them.
When you went to school at Durant, did you live on campus or did you live off campus?
I lived off campus. I lived for 2 years, 2 summers. This one lady, and there were 6 of we girls, and we came up there, and we all shared our expenses. Our mother and daddies, they had groceries. Had gardens, and they put in food and canned food and stuff like that because none of us were poor as Job's turkey. And we all chipped in, did the work. We stayed there, and it was on Main Street. And we walked from there up to the college, and from there back home every night. And so I went there 8 weeks that summer and the next summer too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to high school the next. Well, I went to high school each year, and then the third year I graduated in 3 years from high school.
So you lived in with a family in Durant?
Yes, no, I didn't live with the family. There was a woman that lived down in Hayworth, and all the kids from Hayworth were from Hayworth going to school, and so we all just shared the house. We rented a house, a furnished house, and just shared that together. And everybody did their part of the work, so that's what we did.
And when you first moved to Oklahoma in Pleasant Hill, what kind of home did you live in? What kind of house?
Terrible one. It was a new house, but it was just what you call a boxed house. Had strips going up to shut out the cracks. The floor was plain, it wasn't carpeted, it wasn't painted, and we'd moved out of a pretty nice house from Texas when we came over. When I say pretty nice, it was just a box house, but it wasn't insulated or anything like we have nowadays. But it was painted, it was papered, and so we were very unhappy there. So, but when we moved to Hayworth, we rented one. We had the nicest house in Idabel, in Hayworth in Idabel. When my daddy went to work for this gin company,
Okay.
when he went to work for this gin company, they owned a house there. It was the best house in town. We had hardwood floors, double floors, painted, papered, and very modern. So we had that.
That house still there?
I couldn't say because I didn't, the whole time I stayed with
Yeah.
them.
Okay, so you had the best house in Idabel.
No, in Hayworth.
In Hayworth?
Hayworth, yeah.
Okay.
Hayworth.
Okay. What about when you moved to Idabel? What kind of house did you have?
Well, when I moved to Idabel, I went to Idabel my last 2 years, my last year in high school. Mother and Daddy were still in Hayworth. And he got mad at the superintendent because he got too fresh with the senior girls. And Daddy just sent me to Idabel. And I roomed and boarded in a home. Mother and Daddy, and they had a son and a daughter. And one of the sons and I were in high school together. And
What were their names?
Lord, I know that. Fulmer. And they owned the Coca-Cola bottling works. And they had a big 2-story home, 4 bedrooms, 4 upstairs. I think we only had 1 bathroom in it upstairs. And then there was a large living room, dining room, kitchen down home. But it was painted. It was just a frame building. But that's about the nicest one in Idabel, I think.
Yeah.
That time.
Did you live in Idabel during the Depression?
Yes, I guess it was. Let me see. I know the Depression was on because first thing that happened in Hayworth, one of the banks went broke. And my daddy happened to have $100 at home that he had in the deposit. And that's when he was working for this gin company. And he was handling their money, of course, separate than his. Well, boy, he got up one morning, the bank was closed. And he lost all he had was $100 bill and 4 or 5 kids to look after. Mother and Daddy. So then they had another bank there, and it went on. And Daddy got, I don't know how much, but he finally raked up a few $100 working at the gin. But he put his money in Idabel. So I was dating a fellow from Idabel that I had met in high school. Just dated now and then. And so he came down one night to see me. come down about once, twice a week. And he said, Lola, he said, I've got a secret to tell you, but don't tell anybody but your daddy. And his father was president of what, there were 2 banks in Idabel, in Hayworth, and there were 4 banks in Idabel. And 2 banks, let's see, either 2 or 3 banks, I don't remember now whether it was either 2 or 3, had already gone under. And so when he came down that night, he told her, he says, you go around, you tell Lola to tell her daddy to get his money out of the bank. They're going to close it. So that was a deep secret. Nobody ever knew but them and us. So, and I don't remember, Daddy just had a few $100s then because he hadn't had many, not very long, to make anything. And all we kids were little and couldn't make a dime. We wasn't in time making Hayworth. So Daddy went up the next morning and got his money out. So he saved that little bit.
What was your father? Your father still had the cotton gin at that time?
No, he was, he had it, but he was working for a man in Ashdown that was there in Hayworth. And I don't remember the name of the company because he worked for him for a number of years.
Now, were you going to school at this time or were you working?
Well, I was going to school. I was still in high school.
This was in the 20s or 30s?
This was in the 20s.
Okay.
Had to be. Yeah. Because I graduated high school in Idabel in the 20s. And then when the man at Hayworth closed the gin down there. And so out in the country, it was called Tom, Oklahoma. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, ma'am. I've been to Tom, Oklahoma.
I have too, but I never had then. So anyhow, Daddy bought a cotton gin that somebody owned and decided to sell it. And I don't know how Daddy got the money to get it, or I guess he just paid it out for the year or the month or some way. And he didn't have too many employees, but that was just strictly cotton country. And he bought a house down there, just a frame house.
In Tom?
In Tom. And it was just a block from where the store and the filling station was. And when he bought that, he sold, he was there several years. And in the meantime, Daddy, when there's so many people lost their lands when they couldn't pay their taxes, he had bought a pretty nice farm, I think it's 300 some odd acres, down about, I think it's about 8 miles from home, down on Red River, where it was good land. And so Daddy bought that. And so he started in farming in the summertime, and he could get people down there for $1 an hour. They were all colored people. And so he did that, and of course they'd had to hoe it. Everything then was plow it, dig it, hoe it, and then pick it and all that stuff, which I never did any of that because I was already out of school. And so in the meantime, I think in this farm, I think he bought 325, 350 acres. It was good land, and all they raised on it was corn and cotton. And did that. Then after that, the war came on. No, not the war. Roosevelt, where he cut the acreage down where they could only make so much. And they couldn't even make enough to make a living. So Daddy got a chance to sell this gin and to a man in Ashdown, and I think they just sold it by pieces. I think they sold it and built one somewhere else, a company in Ashdown, Texas. So that's when he got out of the gin business. And then he moved from there to Idabelle.
Did you ever live in Tom?
No, never did. Only time I was ever there was when I'd go home on a weekend vacation or maybe a weekend summertime.
What did Tom look like?
Heck mice, nothing. You'd leave Hayworth, you'd have to go straight this way, then you'd have to turn south, and if it had a rain, if you was in a car, which I usually was, we'd get stuck 2 or 3 times between there and Tom, which was 6 miles from there to Tom. And then when I'd start back home, if it came a big rain, it was better to go from Tom to Foreman, Arkansas, and then come due west on the highway, and we'd go back that way. Then the water would run up on the draining boards into the car doors. I've had a hectic life. I don't know why you wanted this silly thing for me. Are you going to tell me why afterwards?
Oh, yeah.
And so then Mother and Daddy moved to Idabel and bought a home. And my daddy had a heart attack in 1970, in November the 11th, 1970. He was 76 years old. It was November the 11th, 19, and now what year would that be?
Well, I don't know what year he was born.
I don't remember, I don't know either. But he was 76 years old. And he was 76 years old the 26th of October. I remember that much because they were up here for the weekend, he and Mother. And on Tuesday, he drove up town. We were just about a mile from the courthouse, right on the main highway. And he took the laundry up to the quarter where they have one of those quarters where you'd wash your clothes and just put it in, and all that. And he started back home, and he stopped at this grocery store between there and at the house, our house. And so he stopped in there, and my daddy was a very jovial man, and lots of humor about him. I do say it myself, and a lot better looking than his daughter is. And so, but there were several men in there, and they were talking and laughing that morning. I don't know about what. And Daddy had been to the doctor just a week before because he was up here on the weekend. And so he didn't want to come, said didn't feel good. And so Mother said, well, I won't go either. He said, well, I'll go too. So he came on. Mm-hmm. And they came up with one of my sister-in-laws that was coming to the teacher's meeting. And they went home on Sunday. They came Friday, and they went back on Sunday. And on Monday, my daddy went to see a doctor for a checkup. He never had been to a doctor. He'd never been ill that we knew of, none of us. If he did, never did let it be known. Mm-hmm. And so he was coming, he had taken the laundry down and left it and was coming back. And there was a bridge just I'd say a block in town from our house. It was on the main highway. And we had a mailbox out there where they deliver mail. And Mother had just gone out to get the mail so the postman would go by out this mailbox that had J.B. Grant on. And she looked around. She heard a knock or something. And she looked around, and our car had gone off. It had a pretty long culvert and one of these high things about this high, banister. And it went off to the left side and just went rolling down that embankment. And Mother just threw the mail down, and she ran. And she got there, and she looked opened the door then. He wasn't there. She ran around to the other side, thought he'd been thrown out on the ground. And he wasn't there. And she opened the door, and he had just fallen over on his right side and died right in the seat with a heart attack. So she ran back home, of course, just scared to death. One of our sister-in-laws was teaching there in high school, and he called her. And so so she called the doctor immediately, and told him to come quick. Said, Mr. Grant has died. Said, oh, maybe not. No, Mother turned and called him. Or she asked him what his number was, and she called him. And she said, oh, Miss Grant, maybe he's all right. She said, oh, I know he's gone, doctor. Well, he just came on, but he sent the ambulance with him. So about the time I walked in my office, my secretary said, one of the girls is working for me as a counselor, said, wants to see you in your office. So I walked back in my office, and I just had the 2 employees. And she said, we just got a message from your father, and he's had a heart attack. Well, when he said that, I knew that he was gone. And my brother in Dallas, which is the youngest. Oh.
What kind of work were you doing?
Well, I did quite a bit. First, after I got out of school, I went to Southeastern, and Daddy was going to make a school teacher out of me. And I taught a year. And I said, Daddy, I said, I'll wash dishes before I'll teach school. Because I didn't like kids. I didn't want to fool with them. So I took off. And so then I came to Oklahoma City. I taught a year.
What year was that?
I think it was 19. When I graduated from high school, and I had been going these 2 years, I had some college, and when I had finished my first 2 years, I went every summer there. I got a certificate that you could get at 2 years. So I had this 2-year certificate, and I was in my early 20s. Seems to me like 22, but I'm not sure. But I think I was. 22 or 3 is somewhere along there. So anyway, where was I then? What was I telling? I've even forgotten my story.
About moving to Oklahoma City, what year you came here?
And I just told Daddy, I taught school that 1 year. I taught 2 years in school, country school, 3 people, 5 miles out from Idabel. And so I just took off. Instead of going to Southeastern, I came to OU, and I started in school. And I was going to major in home economics, but I decided I wanted to do something else. But I did go on in my sciences and things like that. And so I went to school there. I got 2 years in there, and then my money ran out. So I came up here, and I saw an ad in the paper at Kerr's furniture store, or department store. And they had an ad, and they wanted somebody for Saturday before Labor Day, Decoration Day, and Monday after Decoration Day. And when I walked in, he said, Miss Grant, he said, can you sell? I said, sell? I said, I can sell anything. And I never had sold anything in my life. I guess they'd call it a lot of bull, and I could really put up. But anyhow, that was what and we chatted a little while. And he said, you report Saturday morning to the head of the department in the costume jewelry department at 8 o'clock till 6 that night. I said, I'll be there. And I don't remember. I think I only got, I don't know whether it was $1 an hour or 75 cents an hour. It wasn't anything harder though. They had four girls in the department, and the jewelry, they had one piece that sold for $7.50. The rest of it sold from 39 cents to $1 and less. And they had these 4 girls in there, and they had 2 other new girls with me, so it made 7 of us. And of course, and I had to write up a ticket. We new ones did. The others would use cash register. But we had to write up tickets every time we'd sell one, if it was 99 cents or it was 50 cents or what. And so Monday afternoon, Mr. Morris, who was the superintendent of Kerr's, or personnel superintendent, was Joe Morris. Well, he came by, and his secretary came by and stopped about 4 o'clock. And she said, Mrs. Grant, would you like to come back tomorrow? I said, I'd be glad to. So I went back the next day. It's Tuesday, but to let the other girls go. So I found out in the meantime, it took me some time to find out from different ones after I got acquainted with them, that my sales were more. They had their 4 old girls and 3 new girls and me, and I had higher sales than any 4 of them in selling costume jewelry from 39 cents to $1, except I did sell one piece for $7.50 or $7.50. So that's how I got in the sales field. So they told me to come back, and I was down there about 2 weeks, and they sent me up to the gift shop on the sixth floor. And Lord, we had some beautiful beautiful gifts there, in china and in crystal and all kind of ceramics and just beautiful whatnots, and things like that. And so I stayed there till Christmas, and I wanted to go home because I was homesick. So I asked my boss if he'd let me go. He said, well, go ahead if you want to. I thought everything was okay, but because I asked to get off, and it was in the middle of the week, Christmas Day came in the middle of the week that time. When I came back home, I came back on the following Monday, and Mr. Whittler said, well, we've replaced you. And so I just went into Mr. Morris's office. I said, Mr. Morris, I said, Mr. Whitten doesn't want me here in his department. Do you have a place, do you want that you could place me anywhere? He said, yes. Go down in the linen department on the 2nd floor. So I went down and started selling linens. So I stayed there a while. And then they had what's called a bargain counter. They had 2 of them downtown where they just pick up merchandise from different places and have them on sale and that kind of. So he put me on one of those. Then he put me head on that before long. But I was only making $50 a month. I mean $50 a month. And so I did that till I started in then going to Blackwood Business College over there on Kerr Avenue now. It's upstairs. And I started in taking shorthand and typing. And rented me a typewriter, an old one. And so I'd go home and practice. I'd get off and work at 6. And I'd walk right over there 2 blocks and go to school till 9. And when I got home, I had to ride the bus, and that was usually 9:30 by the time I'd get home. And I was living in a home with a couple, his wife, and she'd always save my dinner.
What was their names?
What
was their names? The couple.
Cunningham.
Cunningham.
Bess and Ray Cunningham. And they just kind of took me in like their daughter, They didn't have any children. And he worked for the city, and she worked at the state capitol. So anyway, I'd get in there and eat a bite of soup or something, and then I'd get in there and practice on that typewriter, and I'd get up the next morning and drink a cup of tea and eat a little bowl of cereal and catch the bus and go back to school from 7 o'clock to 8. Then I was over at the store at 8 o'clock. And I did that it was a little over a year, not much over. And I got to where I could type pretty good, and I could take shorthand. So the state senator from our part of the state down in Potawatomi County, and he was an attorney, he and his wife were friends of mother and daddy's.
Oh, wait a minute, Idabel?
That was in, they lived in Antlers then. They had lived in Hayworth.
Yeah, okay.
His name was Paul Stewart. And he was first state representative, and then he was state senator down there. And then he moved to Antlers, and he bought a newspaper there. He had this newspaper store in Idabel, in Hayworth. But when everything went broke, he closed that one down.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had 2 daughters. And so he got me a job then when I got to where I could take shorthand pretty good out the Capitol for $100 a month. Well, $100 a month was sure beating a $50 a month.
Yeah, he was from Pushmataha County.
Uh-huh. But I'd known him since I was in grade school.
Who was in charge of the Blackwood Business College when you went there?
Is Mr. Blackwood, let me see if I can think of his initials. Is it JC? Is it JC? He's dead now. Seemed like it was JC or had a C in it. And then he brought his son into it, and he was running it. His daddy retired.
How many students were going there?
Well, they had a pretty good size. It's a square room. I'd say about the size of this one.
What, 10 by 20 or something?
10 or 20, something like that. And I don't remember what tuition we had to pay.
Did you go to class in the evenings?
Yeah, I worked from 8 o'clock to 6 on my feet, and then just run out for lunch to and eat a bowl of soup for 15 cents. And then rush up to that school up there, and then heck on that typewriter and on my shorthand from 8 o'clock to 9 every night, from Monday through Friday.
What year did you start working at the Capitol building?
1936. I remember that very distinctly. Well, then after that, I don't know where ages and where dates are going to date up at all, but I know that one. I remember that one exactly. And I went to work for the State Tax Commission there. And then I didn't work in that one too long. And I asked this senator, I said, Mr. Smith, who is Joe C. Scott, and he was the head of the Board of Education. And he was in one of my college classes when I was at Southeastern. And he was a country boy too, just lived out in the country. And so he got the appointment through through this politician, that's who it was. He got him the job, and he took over as state superintendent. And so he went up and asked me for a job. And so when I went to work for the Capitol, I was only making $100 then, and he raised me to $125. And so that was that. And I stayed there. I'm trying to think. I think it was 4 years. But I'm not positive. But I think it was 4 or around that time. And in the meantime, I got married.
Where'd you meet your husband?
Working at the Capitol.
Did he work there also?
Yes, he was working at the state land department just across the hall from where I was.
And when did you get married?
I've thrown my old license away. I don't know if I remember. It was in, I think they went to the Capitol in 36.
Was it before the war or after the war?
That was before.
The war started in 41.
41. This was before the war.
Mm.
I went to work at the Capitol for 36. And I married him in 39 or 40.
Yeah. How did the Depression of the 30s affect you in Oklahoma City?
Well, I was making more money then after I got out the Capitol, and I was doing fine then. I still stayed with this couple, and she made most of my clothes, so it didn't cost me too much. Now I have to pay $100 or $150 or $300 for a pair of shoes. Then I can buy a pair of shoes for $10 or $10.50 because I've always had a 5 double A.
What about the early 30s, 31, 32? Were you in Oklahoma City then?
Yeah, that's when I was working at Kerr's and going to business college at night.
Did the depression affect you much during that period?
Sure it did, because I was living on $50 a month and down at Kerr's, and I was just barely getting by. It sure was depressing to me.
So
I
you
didn't
lived
get
with
to
the
do
Cunninghams.
Sure did. They just took me in as a daughter. And I'd pick up a remnant when they'd have something on sale, and she'd make my clothes. And then, when I got in at the Capitol, though, I went to work for $100 first, and then I got raised to $125. And it wasn't very long till when World's Fair came on in Chicago. And there were 3 of we girlfriends all ran around together. We rode to Santa Fe, and we went to Chicago for
The Century of Progress?
Century of Progress, yeah. I was trying to think what it was. And I think it cost us, I think we spent a little less than $100 and we was gone for a week.
Can you describe what that fair was like?
You mean the
Yeah, the Century
fair,
of Progress.
that Century of Progress?
What was your favorite exhibit, or what'd you do up there?
We just, well, I didn't use too much of my money because I didn't have it. You had to pay for everything just like you do. And there's just a lot of, to me, it's just like a fair is now on a smaller scale. And we went out to the fair 3 times. And then they had tours over town to take us different places to show and go through some of the large department stores, which I'd never seen or been in before. And the city furnished that to take us around because they was wanting to make some money and sell stuff and things like that. So we did that. We left on Saturday and we got home on Saturday.
What was your favorite exhibit at the fair?
Now, I don't remember that, sure enough, though.
What was your impression?
I know I was, huh?
Oh, go ahead. You were saying?
I was trying to think about it. I was thinking about it, but it wasn't. That was another time. Well, I was just excited because I was a little girl from a country town and had never been anywhere or seen anywhere, anything, but just where I'd been. And so my eyes were just aglow, just seeing all the exhibits and where they'd knock the balls down or do this or do that. And then going through the different stores, and then like I said, they took us on bus tours and drove us all up and down the lakes and things like that.
What was your impression of Chicago?
Well, I was thrilled. That was my first trip, but I had several after that. Because after I went in business, we had several of our state conventions in Chicago. And we had them in Cincinnati, then Pittsburgh, then
What kind of conventions?
for the employment conventions. Well, you don't even know half my life yet. You're going to get tired of listening to me.
What were you doing when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
I was working at the Capitol.
What was your first impression when you found out about it?
Well, I was horrified and scared to death because I had 4 brothers, and 2 of them were old enough to go into service. And it was just heartbreaking because I knew they'd have to go, and they did, 2 of them. And one of them, he was overseas just 2 months when the Germans bombed his ship. He was flying were those called? Flying?
Fortress?
No, it wasn't a fortress, but it was another. What was that other name? You think I'm so old I can't think, but really that stuff just, I just tried to forget it. B4, wasn't that what it was? B4 or B6?
It had a B-17.
Seemed like it was smaller than that, but it could have been that.
I'm not sure.
I'm not, but it was something like that. And the German ship hit his. And that was his second week in Europe when he was shot down. And there were 7 of them on the ship. And he got out alive, and one other boy, and the rest of them, they never knew what happened to them. But my brother and this other boy were captured by the Russians, and they put them in solitary, trying to make them talk and give out information, things like that, I think.
The Russians were our allies during the war.
Not the Russians, but
the Germans?
The Germans, the Germans. And they kept them in solitude for, it was about 3 or 4 days. And then they finally got over with the Russians somewhere. I don't know, they sent them clear up to northern Russia. And that's where he was stationed when he was released after Patton. And Patton released him. And when they had to walk, they had to ride clear across that country in just a truck. And most of them they'd let them walk a little while and ride a little while. And his shoes, said they were all barefooted. Their socks, their soles had just worn out. And his feet were so blistered. And said one day he was so deathly sick and had a high fever and said he was vomiting. And so they put him and let him ride on the truck that day. But said they ate the most putrid food. Said it was contaminated. Said, and when he had stomach trouble for a long time after he came back. Said they just ate the most horrible stuff. It wasn't even edible.
Mm-hmm. What's your brother's name?
That was Charles Lewis. He lives in Dallas. He has a business. He told me 2 years ago he made $5,000 that year. No, not 5,000. It's $500,000 that year. So he's making good money.
Did you do any work for the war effort?
Sure didn't.
And you worked at the state capitol during the war?
No, I left there because when I got married, my boss made me he fired me.
How come?
The only time I ever got fired, because he didn't like this guy. And so.
What's your husband's name?
You mean my present or past?
Well, the one you married then.
It was Clark, Hoy Clark, and he was working with the school land just across the hall from me there where I was. And he got to running in there about every morning, once or twice, and wanted me to go to the cafeteria to drink Coke or coffee or something. And then he'd want me to go to lunch with him. And then we'd ride home together on the bus, or part of the way. We didn't live the same place. But he just didn't like him. And tell the whole truth, I had been going with another fellow for about 2 years. And he lived in Salina, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got sick and died of cancer. And it just kind of threw me, and then this fellow, he just started making eyes at me, and that was what caused me to ever have my first marriage, because I didn't give a hoot for him, because I was in love with the other fellow.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a young man, and so was I.
Yeah. After you married, where'd you start working?
Then, when my boss, I went in and told him, and because I had taken a civil service examination, and I'd already gotten my grades then. So, for a stenographic clerk, and I was only making $100 at the state then. I believe it was, yeah, I was just making 100. No, it was 125. And I got a raise down to the internal revenue for $160 a month. So he said, well, you know, Lola, I think it'd just be better for you to find another job. I said, that's fine. I said, I've already got one. They want me to come to work tomorrow if I want to come. He said, go ahead. So I switched from 125 to 160. So, and that was at the internal revenue. So I worked there though only 2 years. And I got a son of a gun of a husband when I married him, and that's my boss knew it, but I didn't know about him, you know. He was just a jealous fool. He thought if I spoke to somebody, he thought I'd been in bed with them. And just one of those kind, I just couldn't even be civil with anyone. He was so jealous. So that one only lasted, well, I stayed with him a little over about 3 years and 9 months, I believe it was. I divorced him.
What's your present husband's name?
John Isom, John D. Isom. He's a prince. He's a registered pharmacist, and he was with Visa drugstores here for 25 years, manager of different stores for them. And he had to retire. He has a heart attack. He had several heart attacks, but he had to retire from that. And so he's been bedfast now for 2 years. That's why I've got him up here now. And his right leg it became numb. He said it had no feeling or no thought in it. And he went to see his heart doctor because he goes every month anyway. And he said, well, there's no pulse there. So he couldn't find any pulse in his leg from here to his toes. And it was just paining him like everything. And he said, well, she said, my stepfather and mother lives in Florida. And he says he's only 60 years old. And says, he has the same trouble you've got, and he's younger than you are. So then, in about 6 months, it switched from the right leg to the left leg. That's where your heart is on that side. And so, that's what we've been having for 2 years. He just, he uses a wheeler, one of these
pacemakers?
No, not, oh Lord, yes. But what I mean, he's using a wheelchair. Not a wheelchair, but a wheel, what do you call them? There's 2 wheels on them with a roller there.
A walker?
A walker. No, not a walker. It's not that. It's another new deal. And he rolls it.
I don't know.
Well, I've got one up there in his room. So, that's, and he just goes to see him all the time. So he sent him up, we just got him out of Deaconess Hospital last week, out of intensive care. And he wanted me to bring him over here. And I brought him Friday. And called me the next morning. He said, honey, come and get me. I'm coming home. And he just raised Cain. And I just had to come and get him and take him home. Then I have a nephew here in town, his wife. They came over Sunday and talked to him. Have you run out?
No.
Then, when I stayed at the Internal Revenue 2 years, and I thought, well, there are other women that are smart, and I'm just smart as any of them. So I had seen several ads in the paper for private employment agencies. So I began to check into that and went to the library, got books on personnel work and things like that. And then I went to, so I saw an ad in the paper. So I went up and talked to a man, and I bought it that very day and went in the employment business. and almost went under. But I pulled through.
What was the name of it?
The Lola Margaret Personnel.
Here in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, for 23 years.
Where was it located?
In the Hales building on Main and Robinson. Well, I first opened up there in the Braniff building because I couldn't find another room right across the post office, and I stayed 2 years there, and then I went to the Hales building because it's a better location. I'd get more people.
Mm-hmm.
So I had 10 employees with me. So but when I got out of business, retired, well, I sold my business. But I made good money, but I worked. I'd get up at 6 o'clock and pulling people to get them out of bed on interview. And I'd stay at that office till 6 o'clock. And maybe stop and eat on the way home, we would. Or come home and fix dinner. Or I was up at 10 o'clock to get them to collect my money, ask them if they was going to be there the next day when they got their pay, to be there to pay me, or I'd pick it up, and just things like that.
Did you do any work for WPA in the 30s?
No, never did. I just heard of that, but that's all I knew about it. They had WPA down in McCurtain County, and I wasn't there then.
Yeah. What's your favorite childhood memory?
Lord, I don't know. I really don't know. I've just been a happy-go-lucky person. And I've loved everybody and liked everybody I met or tried to. And tried to make friends with everybody that I met, whether they were in church, whether it was at work, or whether it was at school, or where it was. I've just been that type of person. Mm-hmm. And in church, Lord, I've just worked my head off in Nichols Hills Baptist Church here.
Mm-hmm.